Hey y'all. Today I'll be talking about the Second Empire of France and how it relates to Madame Bovary. And hope you enjoy. So, even though the novel is set before the Second Empire, it reflects a lot of the values and tensions that came from the mid 19th century France. This is a world that is shaped by material desire and keeping up appearances. So, by looking at the historical context of the Second Empire, we can better understand how this book works. So, what was it exactly? Is the next question. So, the Second Empire was a political regime of Napoleon III who came to power after the instability that followed in the 1848 revolution. And after his coup in 1851, he established a government that promised order and stability. And during this time, France presented itself as this is a period of national renewal and stability, and France has experienced such growth and expanding wealth, but also there's a lot more political control and a strong emphasis on appearances and order. And the Second Empire celebrated their progress, but this came with the culture of performance. So the wealth and social image that mattered deeply to everyone there. So people were expected to look respectful and be successful and never long for anything, have that stoicism to them, and always just come off as refined. But beneath that polished surface, there was a lot of anxiety about appearances and emotional emptiness. And that tension is exactly what makes Madame Bovary like the literary legend it is. So, here I'm going to talk about the rise of the bourgeoisie. So, during this period, the bourgeoisie, or just the middle class, became increasingly powerful in French society. Their values shaped what counted as success. So this was people getting married, owning property for yourself, and having a good job and good manners and good reputation, just good. But this social respectability was a currency of sorts. As I said, it created the pressure to maintain that, but people were encouraged to just not live well, but rather be seen as living well. And this is the world we're dropped into in Madame Bovary, because Emma is surrounded in this world. She is deeply depressed and dissatisfied with the ordinary life that she has entered through marriage, but the only models of a better life she can imagine are also shaped by the same values. So we still see the emphasis on elegance and luxury and romance and all of the sort. But another really important part of the Second Empire is the growth of consumer culture. So, as the markets expanded and things became more available to people, material objects carried a lot more emotional and social meaning. And because it became tied to one's identity and their status, and basically like a physical representation of the fantasy they're living. And this is easily one of the clearest ways we see, especially in the beginning of the book, where Emma does not buy things because she needs them. She uses clothes and furniture and gifts as a way to create a different self and a different life. So while societally, this kind of greed can come off as trying to just flaunt, for Flaubert, for Emma, these material things represent her escape. And Flaubert shows that consumption has never satisfied her, but instead it just feeds into her illusions and eventually contributes to her destruction. And that leads into basically the biggest part of Madame Bovary's character, which is her boredom. Provincial life feels small. It's emotionally dead to her, basically. And what makes it so important is that her boredom is not personal, but connected to the gap between the life she has imagined and the life she truly has. And this is, again, one of the themes that are really pushed in Second Empire France, this culture of performance. Social success is visible, respectability, refinement, status matters more and more, and you're expected to appear stable and cultured and just good. But she wants passion and drama and true intensity, but the domesticity truly kills her inside and just contributes to her disappointment. And her excessive reading of romantic literature absolutely does not help that. So, in this context, you can think of boredom less of a mood she experiences, but a social condition for the period she is in. One produced when one's fantasy grows faster and larger than reality could ever think to satisfy. A little side note, but as we know, Flaubert published Madame Bovary in 1857, and he is often associated with realism. And this literary movement focused on the details of ordinary life rather than heroic or romantic exaggeration. Because he does more than just judge, describe reality. But he really points out how people don't really see it. So he plays very close attention to how he uses his language of desire, or how he expresses the emptiness hidden between the social rituals everyone must go through. And his realism is deeply critical of this empire. And through Emma, he really does reveal how people can become trapped in the stories they tell themselves. But Emma, she is often treated as a foolish woman who is irresponsible, especially when you turn to greater media. And she can even be considered over dramatic or selfish. But we actively, to an extent, Flaubert critiques her in the book, but it is very clear, at least to me, how she shows that her desires are shaped by the culture around her. She has learned and been socialized to want things in a certain way, and she wants the kind of love she reads about and the kind of beauty she thinks as luxurious, and the identity that comes from the ultimate social refinement. It's uniquely shaped by literature and class expectations, and pushed on by a society that equates appearance with fulfillment. And so that's what makes her such an effective character at speaking on the issues at this time, because she is not just one woman making a bad decision, but a product of the world that has taught her to blur the lines of fantasy and real life. Oh my god. Okay. But but as some of you may know, Madame Bovary was published in 1857, and Flaubert was actually put on trial for offending public morality. And that fact tells us a lot about the political and cultural environment of the Second Empire, because the issue was not that the novel included like adultery or something expected, but what made it threatening to the empire was that he presented female desire and dissatisfaction in a way that forced those who read his book to confront them directly. There was no beating around the bush. And the authorities were worried that his novel blurred the line between like depiction and approval. And so although he was acquitted, this trial really goes to show how sensitive the period was to literature, as well as how on the nose he was with the experience that he describes Emma going through. But just to finish things out, so why does Madame Bovary connect so well to the Second Empire? It's because this novel reveals the emotional and moral consequence of a society that the Second Empire came to represent. And it's a modernizing world with a rising bourgeoisie and a lot of social performance. But beneath all of that is a restlessness and frustration and emptiness. And we are shown that through Emma's tragedy, because that's what happens when society encourages people to want endlessly. More and more and more, more beauty, more status, without ever offering any real satisfaction. So, yeah, it's more than just a story of an unhappy woman. She truly is this story is truly a powerful critique when it comes to like the values associated with French society in like the mid 19th century, and the values become so visible during the Second Empire. I hope having this background makes it a lot easier to understand the cycle Emma gets herself in, and even further in the book help us understand why she ends up where she does. Thank you.